Well, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, it's not quite afternoon, or it's almost afternoon. So, yes, we can. It's afternoon where I am, but not you guys. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about, no, a whole lot about what it means to support survivors of sexual assault. Um, this is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as I think it's Child Abuse Awareness Month as well. So this is the month that we really like to kind of lean in and highlight um, how we can do a better job of addressing sexual assault and just bringing more awareness to it and bringing it to the forefront, bringing it to people's mind. I think it's easy to forget because it's not a pleasant topic, but but it's an important topic. So, um, Grace, do you think it's we should keep moving?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All righty.
It's 11:36.
Okay. So, can you see what can you see on the screen right now? I want to make sure you're not seeing all the stuff I'm seeing.
We can just see the title slide.
Okay, nothing else. You can't see like pictures or um the share bar up at the top.
Nope.
Oh, good, perfect, wonderful, lovely. All right, well, let's keep it moving. Okay, Grace, do you mind taking this slide?
Sure. For those of you who don't know, we are Youth of Power. It is our 30-year anniversary this year. Our mission is to empower those victimized by crime through information advocacy and understanding. We were founded by Andrea Conte in 1995. She is a crime survivor and the former First Lady of Tennessee. Some of the work that we do, we develop and distribute over 12,000 resource guides a year. Some of those resource guide topics include sexual assault, human trafficking, senior safety, among others. Most of our resource guides are available for free in both English and Spanish. We do have a few others offered in Arabic and Mandarin. Another piece of the work that we do is research, write, and distribute Voices from the Garden, which is a booklet that memorializes children in Davidson County who have lost their lives to violence. If you haven't been to the Children's Memory Garden in Centennial Park, I recommend it. It's a beautiful place. And then we also develop a curriculum for adults and children. And this curriculum is really centered around empowerment and acceptance of their past and moving forward to the future to create better citizens.
Okay, thank you. Is there any events coming up?
Yes, we do have an event. Our second annual breakfast is coming up May 15th. For many of you, is probably included in the emails I sent out about this webinar, as well as our social media. If you have any interest in attending, feel free to go to our website to learn more, or feel free to contact me.
Okay. And do you want to introduce yourself, Grace? I'm so sorry. I didn't even introduce myself yet.
Oh, sure.
I would not sure.
My name is Grace Kummerfeld. I'm the communications coordinator with You Have the Power.
And I am Sharon Travis, and I do some education consulting with You Have the Power and a few others. So I've been around in the Nashville community for a minute. Did quite a bit of work in the area of sexual assault. So this particular topic is near and dear to my heart, especially about how we can create a more compassionate kind of response to people who disclose or who have the courage to disclose sexual assault, or sexual abuse, or whatever word you want to use for it, any kind of, like sexual assault is on a spectrum, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But just want to really make sure that, or to contribute to creating just a space where people can be more honest and authentic about what they've gone through and the trauma they've experienced so that they can move past it. Okay, can you mute everybody except for me? Thanks. And so this is this presentation is sponsored by VOCA, which is the Victims of Crime Act. And so, got to say that for funding's sake. All right. The other thing that I think is very important about this particular topic, because it can be triggering, to make sure that you are prioritizing yourself. Take care of yourself. Even in the midst of receiving a disclosure, there's a such thing as vicarious trauma, right? And so we want to make sure that vicariously you are not putting yourself in harm's way as well. Even though I appreciate you being in this space and sitting here and hearing this conversation, the most important person in this equation is you. And that compassion is not complete unless it includes yourself. And that's me paraphrasing Jack Cornfield. And again, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you first. So whatever you need to do, even during the midst of this presentation, if that's, take deep breaths, if that's walking, whatever it is, whatever your self-care idea is, or whatever works best for you, please make sure you do that. And so today we're going to touch on these topics. We're going to this is the agenda. We just did the introductions. We're going to do a little bit of defining what rape culture is, just so that we can understand what it is that what a disclosure might look like and how it might sound if we're listening to it from our cultural perspective and biases, and understanding what that looks like. Understanding our role in supporting a survivor. What does that look like? How do we do it? When do we do it? What are the resources that they need? All that goes with that. The do's and don'ts for supporting survivors, disclosures, and recognizing the importance and how rare it is that somebody will actually disclose, and what it is that you can do. Modeling listening skills. And so we'll talk about that a bit, because listening is like the most important aspect of this support that we would provide, and then responding with empathy and compassion. So that's kind of where we're going to center our conversation today. Of course, there's much more that can be done. There's a lot of the other little things that might be relevant, but these are the ones we're going to center on today. So if you guys don't mind, if you want to type in the chat, when you hear this term rape culture, and without reading everything that you're seeing on the board, just give me a word or two or a sentence or two of what rape culture, when you hear that term, means to you. And Grace, if you could help me with the chat, if anything shows up in there. Rape culture, when you hear that, what do we think?
Pamela says acceptance of violence.
Ah, I like that word, acceptance of violence. Okay, what else could it be? Or it's a whole lot of stuff, but what do we think of? Okay, acceptance of violence is a good start. And so when we're talking about rape culture, what we're really saying is the way that we normalize sexual violence, and recognizing that sexual violence is on a spectrum. Rape, a forcible rape would be like on the high end of the spectrum, or probably the highest end. Maybe rape forcible rape and murder would be the highest end. And then on the low end, it could be just using slurs, it could be attitudes, it could be slut shaming. I want to say encompassing all of that would be victim blaming. How do we blame victims for what happened to them, and as opposed to hearing a victim story and responding with compassion and empathy? And so, and all the other things that are in between. Now, when we're talking about it being on a spectrum, we're not saying one thing is worse than the other, because really it depends on how it impacts the person who's been violated. So we don't want to say, well, it was only you know, a cat call, so that should be okay. Okay, a cat call for somebody who's already experienced maybe molestation from a family member, for them, it could be very triggering. So we don't want to rate different people's experiences, and we don't want to rate where it stands on the spectrum in terms of how it impacts them. But in terms of maybe the legal exposure and stuff like that, we can maybe classify it in those ways legally. But we don't want to classify it as it relates to how it impacts a survivor or victim. And when I use the word survivor or victim, it could be that they're one or the other or both. Everybody who's a victim doesn't see themselves as a survivor, because maybe they haven't grappled with it yet. They haven't acknowledged it. They haven't put it out there. And I think one thing when we're talking rape culture that we definitely want to lean into is that it's often people don't disclose. It's hard to disclose. Disclosure for someone to share their story with you means that you are a very important person to them, that you have some value to them, and they believe that you'll hear them, right? And the one thing you don't want to do is minimize that opportunity. I think there was a stat. I can't remember exactly where I saw it. I've been doing this for a while, so I got a ton of stats in my head. But the average rapist rapes like 297 times before they're caught the first time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have 297 victims. It could be one person that they've assaulted multiple times through the years. And so knowing that a rapist or someone who is an offender necessarily may not necessarily be rape, right? But an offender offends that many times means we're not always getting a disclosure 297 times. So that one time that that person comes forward, remember that often when somebody comes forward and discloses that they've been sexually assaulted in any way, they usually only disclose once. If they're not believed, if they're not supported, if they don't feel heard, and if they think it was their fault, it may go away forever. So it's so important to understand rape culture and not to victim blame, and not to try to figure out, what the severity is in your mind on the scale of how things work. All right. And also paying attention, let me just add this, to how society views sexual assault and how they may minimize certain types of behaviors, and how we may say boys will be boys, and how we may support some offenders more than we're willing to support a survivor or a victim. Now, you're a survivor if you decide you want to be one when you make that decision. So we want to be careful about that language when we're talking to people, or when someone is disclosing, like ask them which one they want to be, kind of check in, see where they are on this scale of am I working through this? Then I'm a survivor. If I'm still in victim stage, what do I need? What do I need? What are the resources that I need to kind of move forward? Right. I'm going to show you guys this video that kind of summarizes what I just said. Can we see this okay? Grace,
Yep, I can see it.
you
Rape
hear?
We can
culture.
hear it.
It's a term that describes an environment where rape is pervasive, normalized,
and accepted as
Sorry. What happened? Okay, it's my fault. Let's see. Let's go back.
inevitable.
Rape culture does not necessarily mean that society or individual people promote sexual violence in an outward, active manner.
Rather, rape culture is largely perpetuated via unexamined and false beliefs.
Some examples of rape culture include myths about sexual violence,
Victim blaming,
language that trivializes rape,
jokes,
sexual objectification in ads,
images that glamorize sexual violence,
song lyrics that send confusing and harmful messages about consent, and much more.
Rape culture teaches people not to get raped.
we should be teaching people not to rape.
rape culture normalizes sexual violence, and as a result, a victim survivor may not understand what happened to them as rape.
they may think they are overreacting
And decide not to talk to someone, get help, or report the violence.
Even if they do recognize what happened to be sexual violence, rape culture can cause them to blame themselves.
Feel guilty and or ashamed and feel afraid that they will not be believed.
Including by professionals and authorities.
how can we challenge rape culture?
We can start by believing survivors.
We can also examine our own internalized beliefs and prejudices about gender roles, sexuality, and sexual violence.
We can think about and question sexist and otherwise oppressive messages we encounter in pop culture and media.
We can challenge others if we hear them repeating rape myths
or making victim-blaming statements or rape jokes.
Everyone deserves to live safely.
We all have a role in ending sexual violence.
All right. So I think that's a great summary of what it is. Let's go back. All right, my computer is doing some crazy stuff here. Okay. There we go. And so when we're looking at like sexual violence on a spectrum, know that many rape cases are not supported. I mean, not reported. Many people just don't feel the comfort level for a variety of different reasons. So when someone's disclosing to you and they're an adult, they have the option to choose whether or not they want to involve the police or not. Like that is not necessarily something that they have to do unless they're under the age of 18, particularly in the state of Tennessee. If you get a disclosure from someone under the age of 18, you are a mandated reporter. You do not have the option of not reporting it. And so that report would go to the department. It could be to the police or to the Department of Children's Services, but you must report under 18. And then there's a little wiggle room between 16 and 18 about whether or not they have to report it or not. But I would err on the side of caution. I wouldn't fall into the wiggle room side. If they're 16 or 17, report it and let the authorities decide how they want to move forward with that. And even if it's something, I think this is the hardest thing to want to report, especially if it's somebody's family members, because there's so much involved in that. Let the authorities figure out all of the little pieces that go in between. Okay, you just do your part, because you can be charged for having this knowledge and not reporting it. And so you don't want to get in that kind of trouble, especially if you're a professional working with kids. And if a survivor does want to report, the police may or may not investigate. There's lots of rape kits in there. There's may not be enough evidence for them to think they can move forward. You know, a lot of this is prosecutorial discretion as well. a prosecutor may say, I don't have enough to get a conviction, so I'm not going to follow up. So know that the legal remedy is part of this process, but what we really need to center more is how that person heals. Because whether or not they get a legal remedy or not is not as important as their own personal agency and being able to use their voice and move forward in whatever healing process and whatever that looks like, allowing them to be able to make that choice. Okay. And so often we don't get convictions. Most people do not lie about rape or sexual assault. So don't get into a thing of trying to figure out whether they're telling the truth or not, or what truthfulness, or they may have a different perspective on some things. The real thing, the most important thing is to be present and to be available, to hear them, to listen, and not judge. Okay, so next. And so the impact of sexual trauma is wide and varied. Some people become overachievers, some people drug addicts, so there's this whole spectrum of behaviors that somebody might embody. Some people may become very promiscuous, other people may go the other route and become very frigid. So we don't want to lock anybody into one way, but know that the impact of trauma is full circle. It impacts your brain, it impacts your thinking, your attitudes. It also impacts your body. There's a such thing as a somatic response. So someone might be triggered in some way and they feel it in their body. They may have, I remember when I worked at the Sexual Assault Center, one of the areas that would come up often in terms of where people stored trauma, stored their pain, would be in their stomachs or in their bellies or in their private areas, or they may get headaches, right? So there's this somatic response as well. So we don't want to think of it only as just this memory, because your body has a memory too. There's a book out called The Body Keeps the Score, where it talks about how we somatically hold trauma in our body, and it may, create a space where we are experiencing PTSD. So know that trauma is all of this. It definitely impacts our relationships, our learning. If it's kids, the brain development. We know that trauma, all trauma is an ACE, right? Sexual trauma is definitely one of the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And it could impact behavior. Our choices that we make, how we move forward. Again, maybe you're promiscuous, maybe you're the other way, you don't want to have anything to do with any kind of sexual content at all. So just recognizing that the impact of trauma is full body. It's everything. Okay. Do's and don'ts. So do listen. Okay. I think listening is the most important thing you can do. You can ask questions that prompt, but not make suggestions. What you're really doing is just listening, just letting them get it out. Because what we know about sexual trauma in particular, but all trauma, when it impacts the brain, there's something that goes on in the brain where your ability to use the executive function of your brain is impaired. So you may not remember things in order. It could be, scattered, because the executive function of your brain goes offline while the amygdala takes over, because that's the part of your brain that says, danger, danger, I need to be safe. And so it goes into safety mode, and it slows down the ability to think things like in sequential manner. So how they may tell you the story, or things they might leave out, are just par for the course. It's what happens when we experience trauma. So we don't want to put pressure on them in that moment to try to remember every single detail. Let them tell you their story their way, in the way that they remember it. And you just hear them, you listen. If you are in a professional setting, you need to take notes, fine, but you want to be present. You definitely want to listen. And you definitely want to believe them, no matter what the circumstance is, like no slut shaming, just believe them in terms of whatever it is that they're telling you. Now, the context of it, the impact of it, that's all different. But in that moment, the most important thing, there are three things that keep survivors from moving forward in their healing process. And these three things, not the only three things, but these are the three things that we can put our finger on and identify, is they do not think they'll be believed, they don't think they'll be supported, and they think it was their fault, even when it wasn't. I think about a person that one of my therapist friends had as a client. She was about 22, and she was assaulted when she was a child, like 7 or 8, by a family member. I think it was like an uncle. And one of the things they do when they first come into therapy is kind of just do an assessment of where they are in this process of healing. And so she asked her the question, who do you think was most at fault for what happened to you when you were 7, right? And this young woman who was about 22 or 23 at the time said, oh, I was at fault because I shouldn't have been here, done this, whatever. And it was through that process of kind of going through therapy and recognizing that a 7-year-old cannot be at fault. And really, the law even backs that up. If anybody under the age of 13 in the state of Tennessee cannot give consent, cannot consent. So 12 and under cannot, under any circumstances, consent to sex. And so helping her understand that you didn't have the agency, you were 7, the person who assaulted you was the adult, and onus is on them. So it's not your fault. And so recognizing that that's what a groomer would use to make you think it's your fault. Maybe they gave you something to drink that you shouldn't. Maybe you were somewhere that they know you shouldn't have been at that time. It still doesn't make it your fault. Okay, so just kind of reinforcing those three things will help in getting disclosures. Recognizing how hard it is for somebody to come forward. The other thing I think about, particularly the Bill Cosby disclosures as an example, where all these 50 women coming forth like 20, 30 years later, and how people responded to them. Well, they just want his money. And I'm not saying that some of them didn't, I don't know. I'm not litigating that aspect of it, but we do know he was found guilty for one of them, right? And that person tried to tell, but people didn't believe her. They she tried to tell like 15 years before and was kind of shut down. So recognizing how hard it is and how difficult it is for somebody to come forward and disclosing, and honoring that by listening and believing them. Okay. Let them be in control of the conversation and stay in control. One of the other things that I think about, especially when it comes to sexual assault survivors, is how often you lose your voice. It is something that you lose. You lose that agency to be able to tell. And what you want to give them back as they're sharing with you what happened to them is that sense of control and that sense of agency back. And by 1, listening, 2, letting them tell their story their way, and respecting their decisions about how they move forward in this, whatever that is. If it's counseling, if it's a legal remedy, if it's doing some kind of group work, whatever it is, you want to respect wherever they are in their healing process, and be patient and respect their boundaries. Okay? Don't ask them why they didn't say anything sooner. I think about the Bill Cosby situation, that's what I heard constantly, especially in social media. And again, we're talking rape culture, right? And the culture of the pop culture. That was a big one. Well, if that really happened, why didn't they say something? Maybe they couldn't say anything because, again, sexual assault impacts the body. It's also somatic, and there's some part of them that just couldn't bring themselves to say it. So we have to honor when a person chooses to disclose, and don't judge them for anything they did before the assault or abuse or after. Okay. Like, who knows what we would do in that type of situation if we were in the same situation. We don't all respond the same way. And again, the logical function of our brain after a trauma is not functioning right. It's offline, right? So how you might move forward is going to be very individual to how you feel safe and how you feel protected. And if that means you withdraw, if that means you don't tell, that's just part of your coping strategy. I'm not saying whether it's a good or bad strategy. I'm just saying it's theirs. Don't ask them why they didn't try to run away or fight back. There's that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response we have when trauma happens. Some people will fight, some people will run, some people will try to go along with it so that the trauma is not even worse than it might be in that moment. That's fawn. Or some people freeze. And there's no telling which one you'll be until something happens and you see yourself in that space and you find yourself in that space. Don't judge. Okay. So we're not the judge or the jury or the executioner here. Also, I want to pay attention to how I'm using like genderized language when I'm talking about this. I'm saying she or he or whatever, but it could be anybody. Actually, people in the LBGT plus community experience higher rates of sexual assault than others. People of color have higher rates, and I don't know if it's higher rates or just more willingness to disclose. Who knows why, but they're just these higher rates in different spaces and places. And it's really tough, especially for people of color, to come forward and go to the justice system when they feel like that system hasn't supported them in the past. So we want to be careful about how we judge and how we see it, because it is culturalized, right? There is a thing as rape culture, and then there are these subcultures that exist within that rape culture, and people have their reasons for how they might respond. So giving space to that, recognizing our own biases as it relates to that, so that we are given more room and more space for people to be able to disclose and share based on how they experience the culture. And then it's not your story to tell. If this is an adult and they shared with you, be mindful not to share their story without their permission. Now, I'm sharing some stories here about things that I've witnessed and observed, but you don't know who they are, right? There's nothing telling you who these people are. And so if you're sharing something in a way that's educational, that's edifying and helping somebody else that does not disclose the identity of that person, that's a little different, right? And so we want to just be mindful not to do that. Okay. So why is listening important? So the most important thing you can do is listen, believe what they're saying, and let them tell you what they need. So before I move any further, I think I see something in the chat. And does anybody have any questions, thoughts, or comments about what we've talked about so far? And Grace, can you share the chat with me?
Pamela said earlier, when we we're disclosing that strangulation is a mandatory report to law enforcement, no matter the age, but there's been no other comments since. But I'll make sure to keep you updated.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for sharing that, Pam. That's so true. It is, remember, we are mandated reporters if they're under 18. No question, no issue about that. Just make sure that that's your thing and know who to report to. Again, DCS has a hotline. You don't even have to give your information if you don't want to. You do need to give enough information for them to identify who's at risk and what needs, basic information so that they can investigate it fully. But definitely we want to make sure that we're lifting up our children and we're protecting our children. Now we're also screening for children and we're paying attention to who's around them and whatever. And we don't want to do it in a way that scares off the real caring adults and the real, situations that might be influential for that child, but we do want to pay attention to our own internal warning system. And we all have one where you just feel like something's just not quite right. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right. Those are the things you might want to pay attention to and investigate more fully, because that's our own internal warning system letting us know something's not right. Pay attention, pay attention. Okay, it may not necessarily be something you can act on, but it is something you can pay attention to, right? Okay. So there is a listening skills worksheet. Let me stop this share for a minute. I am, you know what? I'm going to put it in the chat. So let me go back. Let me go back and put it in the chat. Okay, any questions, comments, thoughts, anything so far? Let me see. Okay. Current slide, here it is. Did I not? Okay, I'll put it in the chat later. I'm gonna stop the share and I'm gonna share the worksheet with you and then I'll go back to the PowerPoint. I think that's what I want to do. Okay, here it is. Okay, is it showing?
I don't see anything.
You don't see anything?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's because share. Okay. How about now? Do you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is like an active listening skills worksheet, and I will put the link for it in the chat at the end of the presentation. And so what does it mean to be an active listener rather than a passive one? And so it really means to participate in the conversation. Now, we talked about allowing the person to say what they need to say, without interrupting and ever, but there's a way to show that you're paying attention. And so if you're on your phone, looking on the phone at something while they're talking, that's not active listening. Or if you're watching TV or you're barely present, that's not an active listener. So what you really want to do is lean in. You want to hear them. You want to, ask clarifying questions, like, or just make comments. Clarifying questions might be just repeating and reflecting back what they said to you, and you know, and making sure that you heard them correctly. It can be nonverbal. It could just be a nod. It could be maintaining that eye contact, or just saying, oh, wow, you know, that makes sense. Or I hear you, or I understand. And if you don't understand, well, you know, you don't have to say that, but you can say, I think it's important to use like empathetic and sympathetic language, not sympathetic, empathetic and compassionate language that that lets them know that you care. You know, I think there's that saying out there that people don't remember everything that you say, but they do remember how you made them feel. And so what you really want to do is create that space where they feel heard. And so encourage them to continue to share by asking open-ended questions. How did you feel when? Can you tell me more? What is it like to, I don't know how you maybe not experience sexual assault, but what was it like to have these memories over and over again? Maybe if you're tapping into that part of it. So just remembering to create a space where they can share more, because then you're helping their executive function move forward without creating suggestions. So you don't want to suggest, but you do want to prompt them to speak more on what's going on. And then strive to understand. Again, be present, keep an open mind, don't judge, pay attention to your own biases. Where are your biases and where do they end? Having a bias is not a bad thing. Not understanding that you have a bias is a bad thing. Not understanding where they are and how they impact your ability to hear somebody that comes from a different culture or who's had some different experiences than yourself is where we need to pay attention to how our biases interrupt the ability to be compassionate and empathetic. Okay, we're gonna stop there. We're gonna go back. And we're gonna continue from this slide. Okay, is my PowerPoint back up?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show this video here. And I would like to talk about it a little bit because I think this is very important to understand in understanding how we respond. So, yeah, pay attention and let's talk about it a little bit on the other end.
Sympathy, empathy, compassion. These three words often get used synonymously, but there are some important differences. When you think of compassion in particular, what comes to mind? How is it different or similar to sympathy and empathy? It can be tricky to tell between them to begin with, but knowing what compassion really is crucial when researching these topics. Here at the Compassion Research Lab, we've conducted extensive research on compassion. We've looked long and hard at what it is and how it differs from sympathy and empathy. We did this by reviewing the scientific literature and by speaking with patients directly about their experiences. Both the literature we reviewed and the patients we spoke to gave us a comprehensive understanding of the true nature of compassion. To illustrate, let's imagine you're a patient recently diagnosed with cancer. Your outlook is good, but you're worried. On top of all of this, it's happened right in the middle of a big move. Hearing about this, you notice your family, friends, co-workers, and healthcare providers all react in different ways. Oh my goodness, that sounds awful. Are you gonna be okay? I'm so sorry, it must be horrible. Thinking of you, this is sympathy. It's a pity-based response based on a lack of understanding. It makes people say things that make them feel better, but it doesn't do much for you. Then there are others that try to understand what it would be like for them if they were in your situation by trying to feel what you are feeling. They tell you that they know what you're going through. They imagine what it would be like for them to be in your shoes. They might tell you that they have gone through something similar. This is empathy. It makes you feel heard, understood, and a bit better about your situation. But then there are those who try to really understand what it is like for you, to feel what you feel, and who aren't afraid to suffer with you and to do something to help. They actively listen, they're kind, they're loving, and they genuinely seek to understand you and your unique needs. But then they go one step further and show up on the weekend to help out with the big move. They haven't said they feel sorry for you, they haven't just understood you. They have been selfless and done something to help. They aren't afraid to engage you in your suffering. They understand you and what you actually need, not just what they would want if they were in your shoes. Most important of all, they actually do something to improve your situation. That is compassion. Sympathy, empathy, and compassion may seem similar, but for those experiencing suffering, the differences are obvious and impactful. Patients told us that sympathy was unwelcomed and unhelpful. They told us that empathy was better because it attempted to understand what it would be like to be in another person's shoes. But compassion took things to the next level by understanding and addressing a patient's needs in a personalized manner, not just through words or feelings, but by putting their ego aside and by getting their hands dirty in order to actively engage and alleviate a person's suffering.
Right.
Sympathy, empathy, compassion. These three words
All right. All right. So when we're talking sympathy, empathy, and compassion, now can we tell the difference between the is there like a clear difference between the three of them? And which one would you rather feel? Just which one would you rather someone share with you if you just put in the chat? Sympathy, empathy, or compassion on a personal note? And while you're typing, I'm going to just get into what the healing process might look like. One, know your resources, know what your community offers, know what the hotlines are. There's a sexual assault hotline that is statewide. There's a sexual assault hotline that is national. Easy to Google, just sexual assault hotline. Whatever's in your area, there's some that are regional. Just put it in, just put it in there, Google it, they'll pop up. Know where your counseling centers are that specialize in trauma-focused counseling. Know where your safe clinics are. In Nashville, you have a couple. You have, there's one at the Sexual Assault Center. There's one at Vanderbilt. I think there's another one. I think St. Thomas has one. Don't quote me though. So they were opening one when I last checked. And then there's one out east somewhere. So there are a couple of, so you need a SANE nurse, that's a sexual assault nurse examiner. So not every hospital has one. So know which ones of your hospitals do have those. Know that healing can look different for different people. Some people might not want to do a therapist. They may want to do a group, or they might want to find a book club or anything like that that helps them kind of grapple with what it is that they're dealing with. So let them do it their own way. But just kind of you might make suggestions about things. And then after it's said and done, occasionally check in. How are you? What do you need? How may I help? How can I support you? What does that look like for you? Asking them what support looks like in your check-in. And then finally, know that every time you get a disclosure, you are experiencing that trauma as well. Not in the same way, but it does take a toll. So you want to make sure that you take care of yourself. I see there's one comment in the chat. Can you share that, Grace? I can't see it.
Yep. Amanda said compassion.
You would rather have compassion. I think we all would, right? I think that I want somebody to put some feet to the fire with this thing, not just hear me. Hear me is good. I won't not take hearing. Hearing is a great thing. But I think when you say, what can I do? How can I meet you? Where you are is taking it the next step further. And it really creates a sense of safety that has already been breached. So it's kind of rebuilding and repairing a space that's been broken. And so I think that having compassion for somebody is very helpful in knowing which one and how and when, right? And finding out what support looks like for them, asking that question and then doing it. So thank you for sharing, Amanda. Okay, and last video I want to show you, and this is this lady's particular story on something she learned. I want us to pay attention about cancel culture, because we are quick to cancel people out, and some people might need to be dealt with more harshly, and other people have their own journey, right? And in some spaces, especially like in a church, I always found it most difficult to have this conversation in a church setting, because in that setting you will have offenders and victim survivors in the same space. And so how do we, and it may not be a legal remedy that's needed, and it may not have been something that was like seriously criminal, but more misunderstanding or not having the skill to navigate consent in a deeper, more empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate way, whichever one, right? And so thinking more about what restorative justice looks like in these settings, instead of just throwing away the key. So let's hear her story.
Well, I was 25 when I became director of the DC Rape Crisis Center, and I was a rape and incest survivor. And when I got a letter from a prisoner asking me to teach him about how not to rape again, I was outraged. I was disgusted. And I went to that prison to curse him out because I was never able to hold my violators accountable. But in talking to him and figuring out how he had become a rapist as a child who was violated himself, then I found myself unwillingly listening to him and seeing that we had a story of shared survivorship. And so if I could do that at 25 and talk to my worst nightmare, I really think that many of us can confront our nightmares with love and respect and be awed at the results that it has on us and on them. Every opportunity is given to you to rethink what you previously thought you were certain about. I've learned that I have to swallow that first thought that wants to come out of my mouth, because it's the thought that's usually born out of trauma. It's that second thought that I need to give voice to, and that's the thought that contains my kindness and my integrity.
So just know that your voice is powerful and that you are part of the solution. And wherever you are on this spectrum, whether you're a victim survivor, whether you're an offender, whether you are someone who's receiving a disclosure, everybody has a part to play that can help us kind of shift the culture from victim blaming to holding offenders accountable and responsible for what they did, and also repairing the harm. And just being trauma informed in the way that we kind of interact with each other, recognizing our biases and giving people the grace they need to be able to get the support that they need, regardless of what we might think and what our judgments might be. And so if you are the person who is privileged enough to receive a disclosure, please honor them with empathy and compassion. Okay. And so that's kind of it for today. I thank you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And where else are we, Grace? Are we on TikTok?
Yep, we're also on TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky. We have all of it.
All of it. Okay. And do you want to thank you guys for attending? I know it was a lot of talking, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. We're right at 1:30. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts? Up. I see some stuff in the chat. Okay.
We have a thank you from Pamela. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Hopefully there's something that you've heard that'll be helpful, or reinforce something that you already knew. And did we go ahead?
I have a couple things to add before you guys leave. There will be a short survey that pops up. If you could complete that, that'd be greatly appreciated. You'll also receive certificates for your attendance, probably on Monday. But thank you. That is all from me.
Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for attending, and I appreciate you, and hopefully this is helpful.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. You're welcome. Thank you guys. I appreciate
you.
All righty.